In my view, Burke had an interesting take on the complexity of human language.
The symbol using animal, yes, obviously, but can we bring ourselves to realize just what the formula implies? Just how overwhelmingly much of what we mean by reality has been built up for us through nothing but our symbol systems? Take away our books, and what little do we know about history, biography, even something so down to earth as the relative position of seas and continents? What is our reality for today, beyond the paper-thin line of our own particular lives? But all this clutter of symbols about the past, combined with whatever things we know, mainly through maps, magazines, newspapers, and the like, about the present. In school, as they go from class to class, students turn from one idiom to another. The various courses in the curriculum are, in effect, but so many different terminologies. And however important to us is the tiny sliver of reality each of us has experienced firsthand, the whole overall picture is but a construct of our symbol systems. Our presence in the room is immediate, but the room's relation to our country as a nation, and beyond that to international relations and cosmic relations, dissolves into a web of ideas and images that reach throughout our senses, only insofar as the symbol systems that report on them are heard and seen.
I like to apply Burke's comments here and imagine the sense of dread sailors may have felt when the world was thought of as flat. Since all of my life the world was not thought of as flat, it would seem that sailing off the world was an absurd notion. But it may once have been a real, tangible fear that sailors felt. Burke referenced another instance how our interpretation of symbols can even cause us to experience physical sensations, like revulsion. As you probably could tell from the depiction of the ship in the previous scene, this film has a special effects and travel budget of zero. So reenacting Burke's example of a famed anthropologist interacting with Eskimo culture will have to go down like this.
A merely funny example concerns an anecdote told by the anthropologist Franz Boas. He had gone to a feast given by Eskimo. As a good anthropologist, he would establish rapport by eating what they ate. But there was a pot full of what he took to be blubber. He dutifully took some and felt sick. He went outside the igloo to recover. There he met an Eskimo woman who was scandalized when she heard that they were serving blubber, for they hadn't told her. She rushed in, but came out soon after in great disgust. It wasn't blubber at all. It was simply dumplings. Had the good savant only known, he could have taken dumplings in stride. But it was a battle indeed for him to hold them down when he thought of them as blubber.
It's interesting to me that we can experience the world in drastically different ways when we link symbols, especially words given to us or applied on our own. Telling someone you place connected paper clips on their neck will net one reaction, quite different than telling them you put a live centipede there. Many a prank can be traced back to the prankster understanding this human trait. As I've mentioned, an insight Burke provided me is that we have our own symbol systems that help us make sense of the world. But as we all know, our symbol systems aren't entirely unified, which allow us to experience events in different ways. Consider this example. A man sits under an apple tree, and the inevitable happens. The experience of an apple falling on one's head takes on significant meaning if you, say, had the symbol system of a physicist. Well, according to a popular, somewhat true story, it did in Isaac Newton's case. While trying to process this experience, he realized through the language and symbols of the physicist that something larger was at play, which led to trying to explain the concept of gravity. But someone unfamiliar with the language of the physicist may experience the apple falling as inspiration of a different kind, such as motive for revenge. Or see the falling apple as opportunity. Burke had a keen insight into how our point of view, which we express through language, directs our attention to the things happening around us, or to us. For a lover and critic of theater, Burke used the metaphor of terministic screens. Like the dimensions of the theater which allow us to see only a portion of the reality that exists, we select terms that allow us to see the world in a certain way.
We have the doctor's point of view, as distinct from the lawyers, the chemists, the sandhogs, and the reporters. Even if any given terminology is a reflection of reality, by its very nature, as a terminology, it must be a selection of reality. And to this extent, it must function as a deflection of reality.
Let me explain this further. The specialized terms or words we use in our everyday lives to communicate with each other, they also direct our attention towards a way of seeing. While Kenneth Burke was extremely well read, his insight into physics compared to Newton's was probably limited in his role as a rhetorical scholar. Yet Newton himself understood his terministic screen allowed him to see the universe in a clear light. Yet the inner workings of humans around him at times remained a frustrating mystery. It was Isaac Newton's directed attention towards these bodies in motion that allowed him to express through symbols the creation of his 3 laws of motion that are still taught to this day. But where Newton's selection of terms allowed him to see motion in a unique and lasting way, in my view, Burke's own terministic screen provided insightful focus on our use of language. A directed focus that showed him language wasn't motion, but action.
We do make a pragmatic distinction between the actions of persons and the sheer motions of things. The slashing of the waves against the beach, or the endless cycle of births and deaths in biologic organisms, would be examples of sheer motion. Yet we, the typically symbol-using animal, cannot relate to one another surely as things in motion.
Here's what I think Burke is trying for. We see 2 men who recognize each other move in for a handshake. The handshake itself has symbolic significance, showing camaraderie between the 2 men. Planetary bodies interact with each other as Newton discovered, and that is motion. Using language or symbols to interact, according to Burke, is action. And it's what justifies us as persons, more than mere things. Otherwise, we'd have little to say in our interactions with each other, which would be an awkward way to exist at best.
And the difference between a thing and a person is that one merely moves, whereas the other acts. For the sake of the argument, I'm even willing to grant that the distinction between things moving and persons acting is an illusion. All I would claim is that, illusion or not, the human race cannot possibly get along with itself on the basis of any other intuition. We must use terministic screens, since we can't say anything without the use of terms. Whatever terms we use, they necessarily constitute a corresponding kind of screen. And any such screen necessarily directs the attention to one field rather than another.
Burke understood that symbols we use can never fully provide the person receiving the symbol with a total picture of what it represents. As I see it, each word can operate as a terministic screen. Consider a person's name, like Layla. While the name Layla may bring that person to mind, the name can never encompass everything there is to know about that person. That she is a follower of Islam, a huge fan of Jimi Hendrix, loves jelly beans, and is a communication scholar.
Ways of seeing are ways of not seeing.
Ways ways of seeing are ways of not seeing. It's probably one of my favorite Burke quotes, and it serves as a good summation of this section. We'll definitely come back to our place as the symbol-using animals who perform action in symbolic ways, but first, we'll continue with the next aspect of Burke's definition of humans.